we are going to discuss boot up process of router. Well, I'm using computer from many years. We are all using computers in our colleges, our workplaces, our homes. Computer introduces such advancement so that we can maintain records of our businesses. We use computers for our assignments and etc. We also doing networking by connecting these computers so that we can maintain our organization, and there are number of things which we can do by the use of computers. Well, before going to use the computer, what we do? We first make our computers by assembling different parts of the computers. After our computer is ready to use, before using the computer, we also have to follow another step to use the computer. I power on my computer. Now I have to follow boot up process of the computer. After the completion of this process, then I will be able to use my computer for various assignments. So let's talk about boot up process of the computer. Well, when computer starts, it shows an image which belongs to the company. It shows that of which company our system belongs to, like AMD. After showing company image, it loads the operating system. For example, I'm using Fedora Core or Ubuntu, then it will show the image of the particular operating system. After loading the operating system, it finally loads the user mode. You enter the username password. Here the boot up process completes. We followed 3 steps in boot up process of the computer. In first step, it shows that our computer belongs to company. Second step, it loads our operating system like Fedora Core. Then third and final step, it loads the user mode. Well, user mode gives us the access to use the computer. Okay, well, this visual is about boot up process of router. We have discussed about routers. Routers are layer 3 devices. Routers play a very important role in today's networking world. By using routers, we can expand our networking from country to another country. Well, let me get into. Okay, when we power on a router, it follows a boot up process. You will find similarity in computers operating system, and then you will find similarity in computers and routers boot up process. Like we have discussed that computer performs initial steps, then load operating system, and then finally loads user mode. Well, router also performs some initial steps, then load iOS. iOS is a internet working operating system. I'll discuss iOS later in the visual, in the same visual. Then finally router loads user mode. So let's get into the boot up process of a router. At the top you can see here it is ROM. Well, ROM starts and maintains router. Power on self-test, it is post, bootstrap, and mini iOS are stored in ROM. Okay, so after that it is power on self-test. After starting process of router, plugging and power on etc., router performs power on self-test. Well, power on self-test process cannot be seen actually. Power on self-test process includes the checking of hardware whether it is in working position or not. Okay, after that it is bootstrap. Well, after completion of power on self-test process, bootstrap process starts. The objective of bootstrap process is to load Internet Working Operating System iOS. The bootstrap program is also stored in ROM. Now this process can be seen in the terminal window. Okay, so let's discuss Internet Working Operating System. Well, I have just mentioned about iOS. Let's talk about some operating systems. We are using GUI based operating system. It is graphical user interface from many years. I remember that first GUI was Windows 95 if I am not wrong, and then Windows 98. After that some more releases came. Well, Let's see some screenshot of some famous operating system. It is a screenshot of Ubuntu. Well, you can see here is the menu. This is the menu, system administration tasks. You can see here. This is the GUI, graphical user interface, mostly done by mouse clicking. You use such kind of operating system but just by mouse clicking, and it's easy and it's kind of friendly. Well, we use command line utility for some application for Ubuntu, but although it is considered as a GUI based operating system, very friendly. Well, there are many GUI operating systems: Ubuntu, Fedora Core, Linux Mint, etc. We operate our computers using these operating systems. Well, to operate routers, we use command line operating systems, which is known as IOS, Internet Working Operating System. Well, Internet Working Operating System, let me get into, yes. Well, it's considered as the famous operating system. We as a network engineers really enjoy using this operating system. The functions of iOS is quite different from any command line utility. These functions make the iOS popular one. Well, we get help from iOS while configuration. For example, if I forgot the command while configuring, then I can just put the question mark there. By putting the question mark, iOS will show commands which belongs to that place. Here you can see I just forgot these, just to show you, I put question mark there. You can see all the commands belong to that place. After show space question mark place, it shows all this. You can see at the end it is more. You can just put the space bar, you will see more options. So this is where iOS works. I love iOS. It's very helpful and it's very enjoyable. So let's get back to our discussion of boot up process of router. Okay, we have just discussed Bootstrap. Well, Bootstrap has to find iOS image. So how Bootstrap finds iOS image? Let's see. Well, Bootstrap first finds iOS image in flash memory. If Bootstrap fails to find iOS image in flash memory, then it looks for TFTP server from where it finds iOS image. If it fails locating iOS image from TFTP server, then it finally loads a limited feature of iOS from ROM. This limited feature iOS is known as mini iOS. We assume that it finds a valid iOS image from flash memory. After loading iOS image, it checks the configuration register settings. Well, iOS is installed on flash memory of a router. Well, my 2610 has a 16 MB of flash memory. Well, flash memory can be updated. So we assume that our router finds iOS image from flash memory. Now let's move towards configuration register. Well, configuration register is a setting consists of 4 nibbles which is saved in NVRAM. NVRAM, well, a router also provides a little space to NVRAM. NVRAM means non-volatile random access memory where configuration saves. Well, in 2610 it provides 32 KB of non-volatile random access memory. So let's discuss configuration a bit more. It is required. Okay, here you can see it consists of 4 nibbles each. You can see 2, 1 each word number here is represented by 4 bits. So this is the default settings 0 into 2102. Okay, now default configuration register is 0x2102, which means locate startup config in NVRAM. We're going to discuss startup config a bit later in the same visuals. Well, there are several configuration register settings which are used, so let's discuss these configuration settings. Here you can see mostly used configuration settings. At top it is ROM monitor 0 into 2100. This configuration setting loads ROM monitor. This mode is used for troubleshooting purposes. After that, it is RX boot, also known as mini IOS. Well, loads mini IOS. Under mini IOS, IOS image is copied into flash memory. Mini IOS, also known as RX boot, it is the same mini IOS which is loaded if Bootstrap fails to find a valid iOS image in flash memory and TFTP server. Okay, after that, loads iOS from flash. It is a default setting. We have discussed default settings. Load startup config stored in NVRAM. Okay, it is final. It is ignores NVRAM content. Well, this configuration setting ignores content of NVRAM and comes in setup mode. It is used for the purpose of recovering password. We're going to discuss these settings while attempting our password recovery visuals. Well, after that, there is another list of commands. It is 0 into 2102-F. These range of configuration settings are used to perform specified boot commands in NVRAM. I never used them. Did not get a chance to. Okay. Well, we have almost done with configuration registers. Let's get back to the boot up process list. Okay, we have discussed NVRAM. Well, let's discuss how a router locates NVRAM. Well, iOS image finds configuration file in NVRAM. If it fails to find configuration file in NVRAM, then it locates TFTP server for configuration file. If this step also fails, then finally it loads setup mode. Well, I'll show you how to set up TFTP server. Actually, TFTP server is used for installing flash memory, for installing iOS into flash and backing up configuration files and things like that. Okay, let's get back to the boot up process of a router. We have discussed NVRAM almost. Okay, during boot up process, after loading of iOS image from flash memory, the iOS then finds configuration file in NVRAM. Well, if iOS gets the configuration file in NVRAM, then it loads this configuration to RAM. Well, there are two terms used: startup config and running config. Well, running config configurations which are running on the router is known as running config. When we save running config to startup config, whenever we start the router during boot process, the iOS image loads startup config to RAM. Here this configuration file is considered as running config. We are almost done with the boot up process of router. Now let's take a look at router's boot up process in the diagram for quick review. Okay, here it is from the top. Router first performs power on self-test, where it checks the hardware. After completion of power on self-test, router initiates Bootstrap. Well, a valid iOS image is located under this process. So iOS image is located in flash memory. If there's no iOS image in flash memory, then iOS image is located in TFTP server. If this step fails, then finally mini iOS is loaded. Okay, a valid iOS image is found in the flash memory. Okay, after getting the iOS image, it looks for the configuration register settings. By default, configuration register setting is 0x2102, which means to find configuration file in NVRAM. Okay, here iOS image looks for configuration file in NVRAM. If it fails to locate configuration file in NVRAM, then it locates configuration file in TFTP server. If it fails to locate configuration file in TFTP server, then finally it loads setup mode. Well, iOS image found startup config in NVRAM. Startup config is copied into RAM, becomes running config. Here the boot up process of router completes. With this I am concluding this visuals. We have discussed boot up process of router. If you feel any problem, just replay these visuals and be prepared for upcoming visuals. Thank you.